Okay, with the PC built, now is the stage where we power it up. And you can see I have it powered up. In fact, this has been in operation for about 4 months now. So, but the process is going to be saying, unfortunately I didn't record video of me doing this, but obviously you plug in the monitor, mouse, keyboard, dongle. This is the wireless keyboard mouse, so I have to plug in the keyboard dongle. Plug in all the cables that you need to plug in and power it up. And one of the things that most modern motherboards have, certainly the more higher performance pricier ones, are going to have a LED display or some sort of indicator on the motherboard to give you information about error codes or whatnot. So if you have a problem, if it's not coming up like you expect it to, check the code and then check the manual to see what it is. Bear in mind that there's going to be a code on there no matter what. So having a code doesn't mean there's a problem. And sometimes the code, which might seem like it's a problem, isn't actually a problem. So don't get bent out of shape if you see something on that. Just realize that if the rest of it doesn't come up, if you can't get into BIOS, you can't install, check to see if you got a code that telling you what the problem is. So assuming you got past that, go into BIOS. I recommend setting it to UEFI if it isn't already in UEFI, and then make sure that the boot drive, the drive you want to use for your boot drive, is seen by BIOS, and probably good idea to move that drive to the top of the list. Not all BIOSes are the same, so I could show you on mine the process, but it's going to be a little different on all of them. It's not that hard. Just take your time. It's not that hard. So once you've got the BIOS up and running, you can go ahead and install the operating system. And again, I neglected to record video of that, but I used the Windows 10 Home USB. I purchased it from Amazon and plugged it into the USB port and installed it. Process didn't take more than probably 5 minutes to actually install it. The updates, which is the next step, probably took an hour. So install the operating system and you'll have to put in the code from what it is. But once you got the operating system in, make sure you've got the Wi-Fi antenna plugged in if it's got a Wi-Fi antenna, and that you're connected to your wireless router or whatever way you connect to the internet. So make sure you've got that connection, and then update your Windows. And as I recall, it took like 3 or 4 shots. So you do a Windows update, then you got to reboot the PC, check Windows Update again, more updates, redo that. It took me like 3 or 4 times, as I recall. But once that's up and done, probably a good idea to install your security stuff, for viruses and malware, that kind of thing. It's a nasty world out there. Then the next step is install the any updates to BIOS. Go to your motherboard's web page for the maker of that. Check for any updates that they have and apply them. And again, not all the motherboards are the same, so the process of doing the updates is going to vary somewhat. But update your BIOS and any of the drivers that are necessary for your GPU or any other adapters or components that you have in the system. In fact, you can check some of the drivers that are part of like Windows and make sure that they're up to date. And one of the things that was necessary or a good thing to do with the Samsung 950 Pro PCIe SSD, make sure you have Samsung's updated NVMe driver for that. And then once I got all of that stuff done, I installed the main programs, Chrome, my Adobe suite of stuff, Lightroom, Photoshop, Premiere Pro, After Effects, that kind of stuff. And let's see, then, and I powered off the PC and plugged in both of my 6 terabyte hard drives, and they worked okay, and I copied all the important data on that. My in a way, I kind of organized my hard drives is like I said, 2 6 terabyte drives. One of them is dedicated to all my archive of image files, which is something like 1.2 gigabytes as it is now, and that's going back since I got my first digital SLR in 2002, and before that to when I got my first digital camera back in 1996 or 7, and then even before that I have prints and slides from film days that I scanned in. So basically everything that I haven't lost occupies about 1.1, 1.2 terabytes on my 6 terabyte hard drive. The other data that's occupying that drive is all the video that I've compiled up to basically the beginning of this year. So that's the GH2, Panasonic GH2. I have a Sony, I forget the model of it, and a few other video cameras, including my digital cameras shooting video, going back, and including my digital 8 and high 8 camcorders that go back to 92 or 93. So that occupies another 1.5 or something terabytes. So I've got about half of that 1 6 terabyte drive occupied with my existing image and video stuff. The other 6 terabyte drive is dedicated to my DJI Inspire 1 Pro drone, which is recording video in 4K. So it's eating up data real quick. In fact, I got the drone early January of this year, and my data usage on that hard drive is already about 600 gigabytes. And I haven't really put a lot of flights on it. Less than 10 hours, and we're at 600 gigabytes. Not all of that is the video, I must add, but still, the idea being since I'm probably going to be pushing out a lot of data on from the drone, to have a separate 6 terabyte drive for that. Okay, so that pretty much covers that. Then the next step is optimizing and overclocking. So optimizing, defrag your hard drives, because once you've done all the installs and updates and all that, things get jumbled up a bit. Even the SSDs, while you don't defrag in the conventional sense, it does do a reorganization and trimming and whatnot. So within Windows Explorer, and again, I am running Windows 10 Home, you can select the SSD and optimize it. Now, it doesn't, again, do the conventional defrag as it does with a hard drive, but it does something similar, and it knows what it has to do that. So don't worry about doing it. And also do that with your hard drives as well. So once you've got all that done, your performance is, you're happy with what you're doing, you can move on to overclocking if that's something you're planning on doing. I would recommend, however, that you don't overclock at all for, a week, half a week, a couple of weeks, whatever. You want to make sure that once you've got your PC built, that it's running as you expect it to before you start dicking with it. Because you don't want to confuse a problem with the overclocking. So, and you're going to have problems. Trust me. I have another video, I'll do its separate video, where I cover the problems that I've encountered in the 4 months that I've had this PC up and running. And in addition to, quite a number of minor things that are not even worth mentioning. I had 8 issues of some significance. And again, another video for that. It's not up yet, but it'll be up shortly. And I go into what the problems were, and what it took to solve it. To give you an idea, just to give you an idea. Again, my mouse and keyboard are wireless, and they communicate to the PC using the Wi-Fi dongle. Initially, when I moved the PC into this room where the final location, I had the dongle plugged into the USB port at the back of the PC. And I would go to do something, and I'd move the mouse, and nothing would happen. And then it would move a little bit. And then, I'd move the mouse again, and nothing would happen, and it would move. Sometimes it wasn't bad. Other times it was completely unusable. So, PC is only a week old at this point. What could be the problem? And so I looked around and checked on the internet, and sadly there are hundreds of websites that will give you ideas about what the problem is, with hundreds of different solutions, and interestingly, almost all of them will have comments later on to say, nope, didn't work for me, nope, didn't work for me. So are you supposed to try 100 different things? Anyway, I happened to go on the ASUS website, and they had a reference to USB 3.0 interference. I think I'd read someplace as I was researching this that the USB 3.0 interface tends to be kind of noisy. And while it seems like that's unreasonable or unlikely, I thought, okay, it's worth a shot. So I took the dongle that was plugged into the back of the PC, unplugged it, and plugged it into the monitor, which is connected to the USB through its cable. And doing that eliminated the problem. Eliminated. Not a problem since. So very clearly, having the dongle move from the back of the PC to here fixed the problem. And whether or not it was in fact a USB 3.0 interference problem, and it sounds like it was, but whether it is or it isn't, the bottom line is that simple movement of just a couple of feet or few feet not only improved the problem, it eliminated it. So again, I have another chapter, another video on that, and beyond that problem there was like 7 other ones. So okay, so going back to overclocking. So assuming you wait the appropriate time to make sure that you don't have other problems, then you can begin overclocking. And here's what I would recommend. Even if you're planning to do a pretty aggressive overclocking, don't start with a very aggressive overclocking. Go like halfway. And also keep in mind, there are basically 3 components that you can overclock. You can overclock the CPU if you have one that's unlocked. You can overclock the GPU if you have one that you can do that with. And finally, you can dick around with the RAM timings, the RAM speed. Of the 3, you have some latitude, some survivability if you go too far with the CPU overclocking or the GPU overclocking, because if you go too far and it locks up, you reboot the PC, go into BIOS, and change it back. Or in the case of the CPU, for example. Because remember, unless you've overclocked the CPU and fixed the frequency so that it stays at that, normally what happens is the CPU only goes to the higher clock speeds when it's required to. So you set what the upper limit is by your overclocking settings. But it doesn't go there immediately. So even if you go too far with the CPU overclocking and you have to reboot, when you do reboot, it's not overclocking. It should be at a lower frequency, and then you can go into BIOS and change them back down. Similarly with the GPU, if you go too far with that, either the driver crashes and restarts, and when it does, generally it's not pushing the the clocking in it. And then you can go into the driver control panel and bring the overclocking values down so that you're not pushing it so much. So again, with the CPU and the GPU, you have some latitude, and if you make a mistake, the recovery is generally pretty simple. Generally. RAM, however, not so forgiving. If you overdo RAM timings or push it too far, your PC will lock up, and rebooting it isn't going to help. So, if pushing your RAM timings, your RAM speed, is something you think on doing, and I don't recommend doing it, by the way, the benefit is minimal. But if it is something you want to do, make sure you know what your motherboard's procedure is for BIOS reset. In my case, my ASUS motherboard, there's a 3-pin jumper arrangement. I'd have to look it up to see what the numbers are. But basically, if you lock it up and you need to reset it, power it off, you take the jumper off of pin 1 and 2 and you put it on to pin 2 and 3. Or maybe the other way around, I don't remember. In any case, you swap the jumper, power it up for a few seconds, power down, put the jumper back, and now your BIOS is reset. And you can go into BIOS and then change your timings to whatever you want, and maybe not go quite so far this time. So, again, if you're planning on pushing your RAM timings, do yourself a favor. Make sure you know what your motherboard's process is, how you're supposed to reset your BIOS if you screw it up. And with RAM, you have no leeway. It locks up, you have to reset it. It's that simple. And let me see if that's about it. Yeah, and again, I would personally do a half step with the overclocking so that you don't push it, and then let that run for a few days or a few weeks, whatever, and then push it a little bit more. Just, for me personally, my overclocking desire was not to be, bragging rights. Not part of what matters to me. I'm doing 4K video editing, and a lot of it. I need the performance to handle 4K, which is the reason I got a PC with this kind of componentry and specifications and the ability to overclock it. I need the performance, but I also need reliability. And the other thing I need, or want, is a PC that's not screaming at me with the fans. So, pushing the overclocking too far, and either you're burning crap up, or you're burning your fans up. And I don't want to do either. That was the other reason that I got the CPU cooler, water cooler, and the GPU water cooler, is that both of those help in cooling and doing so quietly. So do it in a phased approach, halfway the first time, make sure everything runs stable. Run, whatever benchmarking stuff, like Valley benchmark. And if everything's good, then maybe you increase it a little bit more. And then sort of balance, and in my case, balance the desire for higher performance against the consequence of more heat, lower reliability, and more noise. And it's up to you. So that covers it. As I said, I have a couple other videos that are going to detail first of all, the problems and the solutions, as I mentioned before, and another video on modification and sort of maintenance of the system, upgrades. What this series of videos is doing is not just, building a PC and then turning the power on and then that's the end of it. There's a life cycle to a PC. We're going to have it for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it is, and odds are, at some point down the road, you're going to want to do a modification or an upgrade. Maybe increase the RAM, maybe replace the GPU. a lot of things you can do. So I'll go into that in another video. Long story short, for me, we're 4 months in, and I'm going to be doing a modification of my PC to eliminate this flash reader, because first of all, only half of it works, and I've got the card reader here that and USB ports here, so I don't really need this. And removing this allows me to move the optical drive down. I can then put, where is it? A G-lid fan controller with temperature sensors into the top slot, and add a second 200mm fan to the top of the case. Right now it has a single 200mm fan, and I wanted to put a second 200mm fan in there, but with the optical drive or this flash reader, the component is too deep and I can't put a second 200mm fan in. But fortunately, with the G-lid fan controller, it's a lot shallower, so I can put the controller in the top slot and the second 200mm fan in there. So the combination of the two fans should improve ventilation, and the way I'm going to arrange it using some tape for masking is so that both fans, 200mm fans, are pulling through the Corsair radiator. So I've got some juggling around to do in the case to do that, but that's my modification plan to do that. The only other thing, and the major upgrade, and you're looking at it right here. This came in today. It's a 32 inch 4K display, which has a wide gamut and operates at 60 Hertz at 4K. And what I had initially, and up until today, was a 24-inch 4K display. And, you know, with my 59-year-old eyes, looking at the text and icons on some of my programs, like TurboCAD, were just too darn small on a 24-inch display. So going to the 32-inch display, which again I did today, makes all of that a lot easier to see, and I am really, really pleased. I did an unboxing and setup video for this display. Check my channel for that. And within the next week or so, I plan on doing a color calibration of it. I have the X-Rite colorimeter to do that, and I'll do that shortly and then post that video up, and also do a bit more critical analysis or a review of the display. Okay, so that covers the building, installing the operating system, and programs, and optimizing and overclocking, and the problems and troubleshooting section will be a separate video, as well as the modification. And that covers this video. Thanks for watching.